No blue tape.
Yeah. Can you guys hear good? It took a long time for this to connect.
You're frozen.
Is it good or
choppy? And you were frozen.
I froze. I knew it. All right. All right, guys. Everyone is invited to come to shul. Here, it's not choppy and not frozen. All right, Chevre, good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi Damai, Perek Zayin, Halacha Hey, and already moving on to Halacha Vav. We're going to be learning Daf Ayin Aleph. We left off on Daf Ayin Aleph, Amid Aleph, Mamish on top of the Amid. We're going to begin today's sugya again, dealing with a muktzah issue. All right, very similar to what we just had a few daf ago. Now that the Mishnah just clarified that the case was both by Tevel and by Demai, a person owns produce in their home, and it's Erev Shabbos, and they are in the Beis HaMedrash, and they realize they will not make it into their home on time to actually do what they need to do, which is to be Matrash Trumas Umaisres, or to separate the Demai separations. So they make this declaration from wherever they are about that which they will do. And still, the Gemara wants to know, how does that work? If their designation goes into effect right away, then they have a mixture of Maisris and Chulin. It doesn't go into effect right away. But if it doesn't go into effect right away, then how can they do it on Shabbos? So as the Gemara just spoke out, that it's mikvar licha she'efrishenu. They're making a statement that goes into effect right away. Their separation statement goes into effect right away, but its identification will only happen when it happens. And even when they will identify it after they ate, even if they were to do that, as we had before by the liquids, or when they have to do a dafka after Shabbos, or as we'll speak out clearly in the Marafulda today, that by Tevel, even though when you make the statement on Erev Shabbos, sounds like from the beginning of this chapter, you can make the actual identification on Shabbos. That's only if you're going to be eating all of it on Shabbos. So what you're doing on Shabbos is L'tzoyrech Shabbos. But if a person doesn't want to eat all of it on Shabbos, then they may not separate all of it on Shabbos. When will they separate all of it? When will they identify all of it? After Shabbos. How can they eat it on Shabbos? Breira. But how does that work? So this word that it goes into effect right away, the separation goes into effect right away. The identification is only going to be identified. And what's amazing is that we don't view it that there is a mixture until you identify. Prior to you identifying whatever it is that will be the Trumas Umaisres, it's mamash chulin. Obviously, you have to leave over enough for you to have what to identify. But that was the whole system that we're working with throughout the Spedic. That is where we left off. And now there's going to be a muktzah issue, as will be. Now, we had it already by the liquid. Here, just to say, here, there's another muktzah issue. The other muktzah issue is that Tevel is muktzah, as we'll see in a moment. But the answer is out, but it's not Tevel, because you made a statement that already made the separation. Hold on. If we're speaking about produce that's tahar, so whatever it is that will be identified will be truma, tahira, I get it. But truma temeya is muktzah, because there's nothing you can do with it other than using it as fuel. You can't use fuel on Shabbos. So what's going to happen if the tevel is tameh? Will there be a muktzah issue? Will there not be a muktzah issue? We're going to deal with that. That will be the topic we'll have on Daf Ayin Aleph until Halacha Vav. Guys, Halacha Vav, we already learned in this Masechta on Daf Yud Beis Amud Beis. And let me quickly remind everyone, and we're going to take it further than when we took it then. There's going to be some cheshboinus, but it's actually very simple. The concept is very simple. Normally, when you separate Trumas Umaisres, normally, you separate it from within. And the example we'll be using throughout is that you have, let's say, a basket. In it, you have 100 figs. You have to separate from within the 100 figs, 2 figs for Truma Gedolah. From what remains, exactly 10% for Ma'aser Rishon. From the Ma'aser Rishon, exactly 10% for Trumas Ma'aser. Vited from what remains, either Ma'aser Sheni or Ma'aser On. You took it all from within. Whatever remains in the basket is chulin for you to eat. A person is also allowed to separate from without. The case of the Mishnah will be, you have two baskets. We're going to keep the number simple. Every basket has in it 100 figs. And for whatever reason, the person is saying that may some of the figs of basket B be the Trumas or Maisres for basket A. May some of the produce in basket A be the Trumas or Maisres for basket B. We're going to see why part of the statement that I just said will work. The other part cannot work because of the rule that Trumas or Maisres can only be separated from produce that's tevel. Once something is mesukan, once something is already dealt with, it's chulin, which means it's pater for it to have any more maisres removed from it. It cannot be used to exempt, to pater, to be mesaken something that's chayiv. Right? So we're going to learn about when could you make both baskets be misaken for each other. There will be a formula that will work. And the Gemara will begin on Daf Ayin Aleph on the base to quote a Braisa, which will clarify exactly how much produce, let's say from basket B, is needed to be misaken basket A. It's not what you think. Now, we already went through those numbers on when we learned Daf Yud Beis. And the Braisa we're going to learn the Braisa again. We're going to follow the whole sugya according to the explanation of the Gra. But what will be amazing is that Shmuel, who's an Amayra, will argue with the Braisa. He'll argue with the Braisa by explaining that the Braisa, at the end, the last step, has to be a little bit modified for it to mamish work all the way till the end, as we will see when we learn this inside. So, Chavra Daf Ayin Aleph, again, Amid Aleph, all the way on top of the Amid. The Gemara has these unusual Yerushalmi expressions. Haga atzmacha. Haga atzmacha means trach tarain. Think into it. Think about it. If shahaisa truma tahira, again, based on what we just had on the end of Daf Ayin Amid Beis, that the Gemara says that this type of pre-Shabbos stipulation tonight works. Mikavad lichasha afrishena. That was the words that we left off from yesterday's share. Mikavad, right away. The separation goes into effect right away. The identification is lichasha afrishena, which means when I'll physically separate it. It's not so simple. What are we talking about? So if we're speaking about a person who is not tamei, and therefore the entirety of the produce is tahar, and therefore when they separate the truma, whenever that happens, whenever they identified it's truma tahira may be consumed on Shabbos and on Yom Tov. Truma tahira is not muksa. So mikvar lichashe oichlena. In other words, when exactly will this identification take place? When will it take place? Now, let me add another layer. When we're speaking about Tevel, I know I spoke it out just to make it clear. Even though if a person makes the Tanai before Shabbos, before Bein Hashmashos, we already established that if the produce is in the person's possession, they may actually do the identification on Shabbos itself, not only by Tevel. That's only if they need to eat all of that produce on Shabbos. If they don't need to do it for Shabbos, then they do it later. That's a very important. What later means, not first they make the separation and then they eat it. No, first they eat it. They leave produce over. That which was left over will be identified as truma. What will happen then, once you finished eating and you left over, now that you know that that which remained will become the truma, will you have a problem moving it on Shabbos? No. Why would you? It's truma tahira. So that's clear. Not a problem. The question is, haga atzmach. But now, trachtarain, what happens? Shohisa truma tameyam. What happens if the truma is tamei? Now, the truma is tamei would mean just that the whole produce is tamei. Ubemela, whatever will be identified as truma will right away become truma tameya. So you can't say Stam mikvar lichisha afrishena. You can't even narrow it down mikvar lichisha oichlena. Because after you ate whatever you wanted to eat, and now you left over whatever will become identified, it's identified as truma. If it's tar, no problem. I can take it off my table and put it away. It's not muksa. But if the entire produce is tamei, I can eat produce that's tamei. I can eat chulin that's tamei. But I have to add a nuance. Now, these things don't need to be said, but it's a self-understood statement. It's not just that whatever I will leave will then be identified as truma. You have to delay it. You have to delay it until when you put it away in a place where you no longer have to move it on Shabbos. Because if it's going to be identified on your Shabbos table, how will you remove it? It's muktzah. Mikfad licha sha'anichena b'zavi is. And I want you to know that we just had this a few daf ago with the liquid. Remember, it's not the liquid that stays in the bottom of the cup, because then the cup becomes a buses, and adding a little bit of chulin was not a solution, but you actually meant whatever stays in the bottom of the cup. But when will it be mamish identified as truma? After you pour it out of the cup. After you put it already in a place designated for the kohen, who will take it after Shabbos and he will use it for a few. Okay. Now, now that we're speaking about muktzah, b'chlal akasha, tevel is muktzah. So says the Gemara Tanu, we learned that prior, in the case of our Mishnah, where you made the pre-Shabbos stipulation, even though it's not going to be finalized yet. But since you are now allowed to eat it, this is gavaldik. You get it to a simcha. In other words, even though once you identify the truma itself, the truma becomes muktzah, prior to its identification, we don't say that it may not be moved. And why would that be? Because it's tevel, because it's not tevel. It's kamoi chulin. That's the whole beauty. And Amar Rab Ze'ero, Hada Amra, clearly you see, tevel, sheyesh olav tanai, which will allow you to eat. And yes, you'll have to leave something over. Mutal taltolei b'Shabbos. Givaldik. And now the Gemara is asking, Ketzar hu oisa. Now, what's the question, Ketzar hu oisa? So there's different ways of understanding the kasha. Look inside the Maraful, the 6-7 lines from the top of the Amid. Ketzar hu oisa. Achal tevel vadai. Shohoyoloi tnai koi. We're speaking about a case of tevel vadai. Obviously, that you made this pre-stipulation. And now we have to add another nuance. If you don't plan to eat up all of the produce on Shabbos, then you may not separate or identify it on Shabbos. That is only that you can do by demai. So hoyel va'asad l'saknei b'Shabbos parech ketzar oisa. So says the Gemara, ketzar oisa noisa ein of the mitzasai. Here's amazing. Whenever you cannot identify it on Shabbos, you still have to make a mental separation. Still have to make a mental separation. Mental separation means not I'm eating anything I want and I have in my mind, I have to leave over 22%. No. Before you begin eating, you already have to decide what part you'll eat and what part you will leave, from which after Shabbos you'll take off the Trumas Umaisers. You have to do that.
I have a question.
Let me just read it inside. Read it inside. Noisan ein of b'mitzasai, and only then v'oichel es hasha'ar Yavaldik. Even though the physical separation will not be done on Shabbos, but you're making a mental separation on Shabbos, and that is of significance. And without doing that, really, it's not okay. Then you're eating tevel. We only make it kamei chulin because you made the mental designation. I'm sorry, Kevin, go ahead.
All right. None of these actions or thoughts are makibepatish. They're not defined.
No, because that's the mikvar licha sha'afli shenon. No, it's part of your pre-Shabbos stipulation. The way I understand it, you don't even have to say the words now and later, right away and later. You don't have to say that. That's what the Chachamim are saying. That in this scenario, we apply it that way. It's an amazing concept. This whole idea of retroactive, and I'm relying now on the retroactive, But that's the final thing in the Gemara. If you're doing it now is one thing. If you're doing it later, how do you do it? Because you have a mental designation. I gave a mental designation is really enough. Just to know, by Hafrashas, Trumas, or Maisis, normally during the week, you don't actually have to physically separate. Machshava is enough, even though machshava should be verbalized. Here, Noisan Einov means you don't verbalize it. But here, you already said before Shabbos that your mental designation won't go into effect fully. It's only going to go into effect when you actually identify it. And in the case where you can't do it on Shabbos, you are allowed to leave it for after Shabbos.
And if someone eats from the pile,
so Simcha saying a good point. If someone accidentally eats from that pile, it's terrible, because prior to you actually identifying it, they did not eat truma. But what they did is that they removed the possibility for you to finalize the hafrasha to that level, and we already learned. And retroactively, everyone ate tevel. Everyone ate tevel. Okay. So here we go, Chabra Halachavav, and many of us learned this properly. We're going to learn it again properly, but we're going to add something that we did not learn when we learned this about few things. Even though truma lechatchila should be separated min hamukaf means that I have two piles that are equally obligated. I am allowed to take off truma from one, not only for itself, but also from the neighboring. If they are near each other, I can do it lechatchila, which would be the case of the Mishnah. So again, we're speaking about a person that hoyu lefanav shtei kalkaloi shel tevel. You have two baskets, and I'm going to call basket one, basket two. Let's just give as an example for numbers that each basket has 100 figs that are tevel. Tevel. Now, even though some of the Rishonim, when this is quoted in the Bavli, understand this Mishnah to be referring to Demai for reasons that you'll see in a moment, we won't learn the sugya this way. We're going to learn the sugya that we're speaking about tevel. What needs to be separated from tevel, guys? Truma gedoyla, meiser rishon, trumas meiser, meiser shein. However, we learned before a rule that a person never removed produce from the threshing floor prior to separating Truma Gedoyla. The case of our Mishnah is that no one is addressing Truma Gedoyla. Question is why? We're speaking about Tevel. At some point, at the earliest point possible, the owner removed from each basket the 2% of Truma Gedoyla. Now each basket has 100 figs. What needs to be removed is Meiser Rishon, from which you remove Meiser Trumas Meiser and Meiser Sheni, which can be Mechulal on Ma'is. Okay? So let's go. I can already speak out another din, even though it's more to get to the Braisa, but we're going to get there soon. I'm saying something we never learned before. This is all to make the gear so that we're going to learn in the Braisa work. A person who separates Meiser Rishon, guys, and you never heard this before, being that Meiser Rishon, we Paskin, has no Kedusha, it's the property of a Levi. A person can even get away by giving the Levi its value without giving the Levi the proper Meiser Rishon. A person certainly can get away without actually removing the Meiser Sheni, because you can deconsecrate it on money that you have in your pocket, that you left in your house. The only thing that you really, really will have to remove begashmias is Trumas Meiser. Just have that in mind. But of course, you can only remove Trumas Meiser from Meiser Rishon. So there will always have to be a Meiser Rishon designation from which you further designate the Trumas Meiser, which will physically have to be identified and removed. All else can remain in the basket. Meiser Rishon, even by Tevel, not Demai, you can give the value to the lane. Bottom line is, the Mishnah is speaking about two baskets. Each basket has 100 figs. It's already tied for Truma Gedoyla. Where are you up to? Meiser Rishon, Trumas Meiser, and Meiser Shein. For whatever reason, the person doesn't want for each basket to be rectified from within it. He wants each basket to be rectified from what I'll call from without it. He wants for basket 2 to be used, not all of it, whatever is needed. Separate from basket 2, Simcha, for basket 1, and separate from basket 1 for basket 2. Halka, says the Mishnah. If he only goes through step number 1, which is va'amar maisres zu bezu, I'm going to go to my 1 and 2, that the maisres that are needed to be separated from basket 1 is found in basket 2, which means I'm going to remove from Beis for Aleph that step. That's okay. And what I mean it's okay, once I made that designation, we already learned you don't have to physically do it yet. Once I made that designation, the designation is in basket 2 for A. Once you did that, so basket A is Mesukan. Now you can eat 100 figs in basket A. Now, how much do you need to remove from basket 2? The Mishnah is not even mentioned. The Mishnah just wants to point out, there's no chiddush, that if a person makes that statement itself does it, based on everything we're learning until now. The physical identification could be left for later, not only Erev Shabbos, B'chlal. Once you make the mental designation, once you make a designation, you're good. He made a designation. Now that basket Aleph is a kvar mesukan, what happens if he doesn't only say maisres zu bezu? The maisres that have to be removed for A is found in B, which means I'm separating it from B for A. Then he adds, and I'm going to be removing. Now, basket B also has 100 figs. Basket B has to be mesukan for itself. Then he says, okay, whatever needs to be mu'usar in B will be removed from A. The second statement is not good. Shalzu bezu v'shalzu bezu. So the first half of the statement works. Harishoina me'useres. However, but not the other way around. Not the other way around. Why not the other way around, Simcha? Because since the first zu bezu worked, which means the 100 figs in basket A is putter to be tithed, it's exempted already. You cannot use banafite chulin to be mesakin tevel. Doesn't work. You can only be toidim from a pile that is obligated to be tithed from itself, because everything is not yet mesukin. Once something is fixed, you can't use something chulin to be mesakin tevel, as we learned so many times before. Now, does it mean that you can never rectify one basket from the other because you will always get stuck in the middle? No, you could. When could you? How could you? Says the Mishnah. Instead of you saying shalzu bezu, vishalzu bezu, which are two statements, if you say it together, how would you say it together? If you were to say that ma'asrei seyem, masrei is kalkola bachaverto, the maisres, meaning the maisres of both baskets, are going to be resolved each for the other. You're making it together, each for the, means at the same time. Then it worked. Then caught a shame.
Why would a person do this?
It doesn't matter. Before you turn to Daf Ayin Aleph Amid Beis. Okay, this is something, and we just to add, because we had this Mishnah and we had the numbers already, some of it in Daf Yud Beis, but I'm going to Masechtas Tamura, Daf Dalid Amid Aleph in the Bavli, and he brings a Gavaldik Akash. In Kedushin, in Bavli Nun Amid Beis, there is a Mishnah speaking about a man who's giving Kedushin at the same time to a mother and a daughter, Isha Bita, or to a woman and her sister. Just technically, how are you to do it? Okay, a few steps. First of all, even before the Chedum de Rabbeinu Gershon, even during the time that a man was allowed to be married to more than one wife at the same time, but there are certain women that you're not allowed to make sodas one to the other. A mother and a daughter. By the way, a mother and a daughter and a sister, even after. Even now, unless my sister is only if one passed away. If one is alive and you're divorced, you cannot marry the sister, but it's not negaya for this. You can't be married to a mother and a daughter, to a woman and a woman. So if a man gives kedushin to one woman, hariyat mikudashli, right afterwards he gives kedushin to the other one, to the mother, daughter, sister. The second one is not chal. What happens if he does it at the same time? One example the Gemara gave to explain the case of the Mishnah is that a person is being mekadosh through a shliach. That means both of these women sent, let's say, a shliach lekabbalah. So there's one person representing Leah and Rachel, two sisters. The man gives two prutas, one act, and one statement. Both of the women are mikudeshes to him at the same time. So the Mishnah says that ain't mikudeshes. Why ain't mikudeshes? So over there in Bavli, in the bottom of the daf, on daf nun on the days, the Gemara gives Amar Rabbi. Rabbi gives a rule that kol she'enoi b'zeh achar zeh afilu b'bas achas enoi. That's a rule. Whenever there are things, if you cannot do one after the other, you cannot even do it together. So Tosfos in Temura Daf Daled asks from Rabba's explanation in Kedushin Daf Nun Amud Beis, kol she'enoi b'zeh achar zeh afilu b'bas achas enoi. It's contradicted by Demai in our pagination of Daf Ayin Aleph. Because our Mishnah clearly is saying bezu, shalzu, bezu, v'shalzu, bezu doesn't work. But yet, if you say masrei say and masrei kalkola bechaverta does work. V'af, I'm reading inside Tosfos the Divrei Amaskol masrei say masrei kalkola bechaverta kanashem. The Gemara quoted this Mishnah. V'af lagav frek Tosfos the kaimel on the chol she'enu b'zachar zeh afil b'basachas enoi gavaldike kashem. So now I want to add another nuance of Tosfos. Says Tosfos, Hachem, even the date lisakone tarvayu, since he wants to do what he's doing for whatever reason, there is one way that he could have done it. How could he have done it? Once we know how much percent from each basket is needed for the other. Once we know that. If I have basket A, and I were to say, Chevra, that first of all, I'm not speaking about 100 figs. I'm just giving a number. Let's say I need to have 20 figs. I need 10% and 10%. I am only talking about 80 figs in basket A because the 20 figs on the top of basket A, I'm leaving Tevel. That the 80 figs will become rectified from basket B. And when I'm talking about basket B, I'm only talking about 80 figs in basket B. The top 20 figs in basket B, I'm leaving Tevel. Because I'm going to be using the top 20 in the basket B to be misak in basket A. If a person would have said all of that, then it wouldn't be a problem. Because when he was misak in basket Aleph by separating from basket B's, he wasn't being misak in all of the 100 figs. If he would have said all of that, it would have worked. So says Tosfos Gavaldik, by a man marrying a sister and a sister, you can never do it. If you give kedushin to Leah, you cannot give kedushin to Rachel. Period. Since in our Mishnah, even when you want to be misakin one basket for the other, there is a way of you, yes, being able to do it bezachar zeh, even though that's not what you did. You're not speaking about 80-20. 80-20 is the wrong numbers. I'm just giving a simple, very incorrect number. You're speaking about the whole basket. But since it's shayich, then enachanami bezachar zeh doesn't work. But bas achas it doesn't work. That's what Tosfos says. Even the date lisakon tarvayu have a keoimer meiser shol rishoyna tehei b'shniya chutz miyud. He speaks about the tevel that sheyishaadu tevel b'rishoyna l'saken ashniya. So since there is a way to make it happen, even though it's not what you're doing, at least but bas achas it works. So that's Gaval. Okay, and now the Gemara. I know
it's like you can't be a little bit pregnant. You can't be a little bit married. You either are or you aren't.
Exactly. Very good. Okay. Now let me speak out the sugya by heart. First of all, there are different nuschais. Second of all, we're learning this exclusively the way the Gra learns it, and he quotes nach and Daf Ayin Beis Amud Aleph, and we're going to read it inside. That he was very excited. He writes that Hai Perusha the Shmaitza Beloy Kusha Beloy Safik, and he thanks God. Tehilo Lokel. He pushed it. In other words, he really had Yigia to get to what we're to his explanation, and he now he has no doubt, and now he thanks the Eibishter, in which there is never a doubt. Okay, I'm saying that because there are many different ways of learning it. So here we go. Simcha Halt Cup. It's simple, but not simple. But it's simple. Let's go to the 100 figs. When a person reads the Mishnah, Let's go to the ratio. The ratio is you're only speaking about, you're saying that I'm going to be misaken basket A from basket B. What do you need to remove from basket B? So let's speak about my sedition. Even though I'm making it clear already that at the end, you can leave the my sedition in, but you have to identify the my sedition because from it, 10% of the my sedition you will actually have to remove. We're all going to go with this concept that at the end of the day, you're going to give the value of my sedition minus the Trumas Meiser to a Levi of your choice, and you could do that. You're going to give the value of Meiser Sheni plus adding a fifth on money, which you'll take to Yerushalmi and buy food there. At the end, all that you are removing is Trumas Meiser, but the first thing you have to identify is the Meiserish. How much do you need to identify? So without thinking, people will say, what are you talking about? 10%. No, now that we established.
Isn't the first thing the Truma, the 2%?
So that's what I'm repeating again. The Mishnah says the words Tevel. The reason why many Rishonim say that our Mishnah is speaking about the Mai is because no one is talking about Truma Gedoyla. The answer to that would be that since you're never allowed to remove produce from the threshing floor without removing Truma Gedoyla, there is, in other words, aside of the Meiruach from which you're chayev to remove Trumas and Meisers, but there is an additional halacha which in practicality would make people remove the Truma Gedoyla sometimes before they would have to deal with Meiser Rishon, which they would leave for later. That would be the case of the Mishnah. So there's no Truma Gedoyla because Danny is right. You have to remove Truma Gedoyla. It was removed already. So now we only have to deal with, let's go with Meiser Rishon. So a person would say, if you have 100 figs, 10 figs, no, that's the key. Now the details will get a little bit more complicated. Why no? Because if I would remove Meiser Rishon, I'm using the words from within, what would you end up with? If I'm removing 10 figs for the Levi, how much do you have left? 90, which means 10 only rectifies 90. 10 doesn't rectify 100. So for me to say, now that for whatever reason, the person is removing Meiser Rishon from basket Bays for basket Aleph, 10 is not enough because his goal is to be misakin the entire basket Aleph. Basket Aleph has in it 100, not 90. So if 10, that's the ratio, rectifies 9, 90. Okay, so after the 10, how much is still left in basket Aleph that's not Mesukan? 10. Why do you need to be misakin that 10? You're going to say, okay, another one. Not enough. Because even though you removed 11, how much were you misakin? 99. You guys, you're with me? That's the ratio. Yeah, whenever you say 10%, you say, yeah, 10 from 100. Shkoyach. But how much is left for you? Only 90. So it's really 10 fixed 90. 10 did not fix 100. So if you want to fix 100, you have to add. How much would you add? Oh, add another one. No, another one would not be enough. Yes, you add another one. But another one, now you removed 11. 11 resolved 99. Now let's keep on going. So how much do you have left unrectified? 1. How much do you have to, what do you need to do for that 1? Let's go with a 10, which won't be enough. We're going to get to Shmuel in a moment. But let's stop over here. Because now at least you rectified almost everything. Sounds like from the Baraisa, that's enough. So how much do you remove Meiser Rishon? Give me a number. 11.1. We're good? 11.1. How much is Meiser, Minha Meiser from 11.1? It's very easy. How much is it? Just take the dot and move it one to the left. 10% from 11.1 is 1.11. Now hold on. Let's go now to the Sefer of the Mishnah, where you verbalized what you said in a way that it's happening by Basachs. Listen, Simcha. If you need to remove from basket base 11.1 for Meiser Rishon, I'm just talking about Meiser Rishon, even though I said already, you're not going to end up removing it, you're going to end up buying it back, but 11.1 is designated as Ma'aser Rishon, even before you get to Ma'aser Sheni. How much do you have left in basket base? You don't have 100, because 11.1 was designated for Ma'aser Rishon. You have less to be Mesaken. One might have thought that since basket base has less, when you remove now from A for B, because you said it the bas achas, maybe you don't have to be Mesaken 100. Here, again, it's a given that we say that in a case where a person is saying this one and that one and that one for this one, he wants to separate the same amount in each basket to the betterment of the Levi. He cannot do it for him. So just as a rule, whatever is going to be separated from B for A, in the case of the bas achas, we will give the same amount from A to B. Which means, just put it all together, Simcha, that if each basket for the other, Ma'aser Rishon, is 11.1, which means really Trumas Ma'aser is how much from it? 1.11. 1.11 from one basket. We want the other basket to have to give the same amount. That's going to be a total of 2.22. That will be the total Trumas Ma'aser that will physically be separated in the case of the Mishnah. On the presumption that the actual Ma'aser Rishon will be bought back by the owner and the money will be given to a Levi. And Ma'aser Sheni, as we keep on having, b'tzvaynai, b'draymai, you designate a place and you right away deconsecrate.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, you could.
This whole thing, these whole numbers, 11.1, is based on trying to rectify 100 units.
Yes.
But if what I thought I understood from before is that when you're making this statement b'vas achas, you're actually kind of parsing it out on both sides. So you're not rectifying 100, you're rectifying 90 in each, or whatever the amount is. So why do we need this whole 11.1? Let me do the 11 from this one and 11 from that one. I'm doing 89 left over, and that's what you're good. Why are you starting from this place that we're rectifying 100? No, we're not. We're rectifying everything except for the amount that has to be there to rectify the stuff in the other basket. That's the whhole point of the b'vas achas.
Okay, Danny. Okay, point well taken. You might even be right. Let me tell you where for sure I'm right, for sure. Let's go only to the ratio of the Mishnah, Danny, only to the ratio of the Mishnah, in which I'm using basket B for basket A. But then don't forget, I have to be Mesaken basket B from basket B. Here, for sure, the same concept. One might think that since you already used 11.1 for the basket Aleph, you only have 89, 88.9, whatever you have left. Nevertheless, it's a given over here that in the case where you're using base for Aleph and for base, you want to take off the same amount, even though al-karbala asaru madois, like how can you add? That's another thing we had before. When Marbeh b'maisros is wrong, we had the sugya.
It has to get added to the Truma Gedola or the Trumas Ma'aser, I guess.
What we say is b'chdei shahadas noita. These were the words that we had on Daf Mem Gimel. That was a very important little daf. This is included in the b'chdei shahadas noita. You can add, and it's not called al karbala asaru madois. We really covered all the points. There's one thing that's deficient with what we said, but let's first read it inside. Says the Gemara, the Tani Allah, but I'm going with Danny. In other words, I have a question mark regarding one for the other. The Baraisa for sure is going for sure on the ratio of the Mishnah, where you only want to remove from base for Aleph and then from base for base. Given it, whatever you remove for Aleph, it will be the same amount for itself. What will that amount be? Says the Braisa. Noitel menashnia, you take from the second basket. And the Braisa is only talking about Trumas Ma'aser. Why? Again, based on the premise that even though we're speaking about Mamish Tevel, from which you have to remove Ma'aser Rishon, but at the end, you won't give the Ma'aser Rishon to a Levi. You're going to buy him out. The only thing that you're mamish removing begashmi is only the Trumas Meiser, which is 10% of the 10%. We already explained how you get to 11.1, but 11.1 is for one basket. For itself, it's going to be 22.2. From that, 10% is 2.22. That's the way the Gemara learns it. What's the 2.22? Noitel min hashniya to shnei te'enim ve'isura shel isur and ve'isura shel isur. Hastu. I'm sorry, skip. Shnei te'enim. That's the 2. Ushnei isurim simcha 0.2, and then it's 0.22. That's 2 of a. In other words, it's 2 plus 2.2 plus 0.02. That's the Isura Shel Isur. Let me tell you the problem with this. Let's work it out. It's never going to be complete. Same thing, simple. Because I removed first 10. I'm going to go back to the Meiser edition. See, the problem the Gra had with this Girsa, his genius, was that he was okay with going Meiser edition, Trumas Meiser. But let me go back to the Meiser edition. I'm removing 10. But we're saying, 10 is only rectifies 90. So far, so good. So now you have 10 unrectified. How much are you going to begin with for the other 10? 1. But 1 only rectifies 9. So here we're good. So in other words, 11 rectified how much? 99. But if we're going to constantly go on this precise cheshbon, you'll never come to an end. You'll never come to an end. Why? Because how much is still unrectified? 1. So it sounds like from the Braisa, for that 1, what do you have to remove really? 10% would be 0.1. Not good. Why not good? Because the 0.1 won't rectify the whole 1. It's only going to rectify 0.99. There's always a remnant. So even though the Mishnah, the Braisa uses the words 10, we're going, 10 from 90, 1 for 10, 0.1 for 1, then it's going to be 0 point this. Shmuel is not arguing with the Braisa. Look, Shmuel Amar no lematzi tanisei. You don't learn it literally. We don't follow the pattern until the end. You'll never get to the end. You know what you'll have to do? Once you get into the fractions, don't say, what Shmuel agrees with the 11. 11 is good, but 11 only rectifies 99. Akan, everyone agrees. What did the Braisa say from its words? It sounds like another point. How much? 10. So either it's a 10th or it's 100th. Don't do that. Now say a 9th. 9th is more. In order for there not to be a remnant, guys, a 10th, 1/10 is less than 1/9. When you divide something into 9, a fraction of the 9th is bigger. That's what he says. Yeah, but at least you covered it. I'll just read the words on that fine base. Ein yisaf chadal asar. Because if you're going to give 1 for 10, he's pointing out the ein l'davar soif. Tzarich l'meisav, now chadal l'meya. In yisaf chadal l'meya, so you'll never resolve it. Then there'll be another fraction left over. Tzarich l'meisav chadal l'elef. Yisaf chadal l'elef. Then what? Tzarich l'meisav chadal l'asara alfin. You have to give 1/10,000. So what's the solution? He doesn't say the solution. So the Gemara says, the solution is. I'm sorry, I quoted the words of the Rashidilio, that he Mamash was so happy when he came to this understanding, and he says that the Hila Lokela should in It must be, again, 11 for 99, even though the Braisa says 2.22, which came from 22, right? It's not 22. It's not 11.1. It's going to be a little bit more than that. It's 11. 1 means 1 out of 10. It's 1 out of 9. If you do 1 out of 9, you cover the rest. And that will be what you give for my sedition. And 10% of that is what you give for Trumas Meiser. That means, just to conclude, that when many people have a bank account and they have tzedakah money, that's what bottom line. Tzedakah money will mean, let's say a person has $100,000. And they say, I'll give for that $10,000. No. If you're giving from it 10 grand as Meiser money, then you gave Meiser Ksafin. But if you separate another 10 grand for your 100 grand, that's the problem. You didn't rectify it. 10 grand is misakin 90 grand. Look who's talking. Shkoyach, the rabbi.